You're sitting at your desk at 2 p.m. on a Wednesday, scrolling through your banking app, and something feels off. Your paycheck landed 3 days ago, and you've already spent nearly half of it on things you can't quite remember buying. You're making decent money now, way more than you made in your 20s. But somehow you feel even more broke than you did back then. Your 30s were supposed to be the decade where financial stability finally kicked in, where all those years of grinding would start to pay off, where you'd finally feel like you had control over your money instead of money controlling you. But instead, you're sitting there wondering where every single dollar is going. Welcome to the silent sabotage that's happening to millions of people in their 30s. And my name is Lenny. I spend way too much time analyzing the behavioral patterns that quietly destroy financial futures. And what I've discovered is that your 30s aren't just another decade. They're the most critical financial decade of your entire life. And most people are completely blowing it without even realizing what's happening. Here's something that will absolutely blow your mind. People in their 30s earn more money than they've ever earned in their entire lives, yet they report lower savings rates than they did in their 20s. That's not a coincidence. That's not bad luck. That's 3 specific money habits that are working together like a perfectly coordinated financial wrecking crew, systematically dismantling your wealth-building potential before you even realize what's happening. The scariest part is that these habits feel totally normal. They feel justified. They feel like you've earned the right to spend money because you're making more now. But what feels normal is actually setting you up for financial catastrophe in your 40s and beyond. Before I break down exactly what these 3 habits are and why they're so devastatingly effective at destroying your financial future, let me tell you what you're going to learn in this video. Finally, I'll explain why these habits are so damn hard to break and what actually needs to happen to escape the trap that millions of people are stuck in. The first money habit that silently sabotages your 30s is what I call the lifestyle upgrade trap. And it's so insidious because it doesn't feel like a trap at all. It feels like a reward. You spent your 20s eating ramen, driving a beat-up car, living in a tiny apartment with 3 roommates, and wearing the same 5 outfits on rotation. You were building your career, paying your dues, grinding through entry-level positions and lower salaries. But then something magical happens. You get promoted, your salary jumps. Maybe you get a new job with a significant pay increase, or you finally hit a position where your years of hard work are starting to actually translate into real compensation. And in that moment, your brain sends out a signal that says you've earned this, you deserve to upgrade your life. So you move to a nicer apartment in a better neighborhood, maybe even a place where you actually have your own bedroom, and you don't have to listen to your roommate's loud gaming sessions until 3 a.m. every night. You buy a nicer car, something reliable that doesn't make weird noises and actually has heated seats and a good sound system. You start eating out regularly instead of cooking, going to restaurants instead of meal prepping on Sunday nights. You buy better clothes, upgrade your electronics, get a gym membership at a nice studio instead of the sweaty, intimidating big box gym where everyone looks like they actually know what they're doing. And here's where it gets really twisted, because each individual upgrade makes perfect sense on its own. Moving to a nicer apartment is a reasonable thing to do when you're making more money. A reliable car is a legitimate financial tool, not a luxury. Eating out occasionally isn't financial irresponsibility. But here's the thing that nobody tells you about lifestyle upgrades in your 30s. They don't just cost more money than your previous lifestyle. They create a new baseline for what you consider normal, acceptable, and deserved. Your brain rewires itself around this new level of spending. The nice apartment that initially felt like an incredible luxury becomes your normal, and then it becomes the minimum acceptable standard. The restaurants where you eat out once a week become part of your expected lifestyle. The clothes you buy, the experiences you pay for, the subscriptions that automatically charge your credit card every month, they all become the new floor, not the ceiling. And because they've become your new normal, they feel non-negotiable. You can't go back to eating ramen because that feels like a failure, like you're sliding backwards instead of moving forwards. You can't move to a cheaper apartment because that would feel like a downgrade, a public acknowledgement that you're not as successful as you appear to be on social media. And you definitely can't get rid of your nice car, because how would that look to your friends and colleagues? The lifestyle upgrade trap works so effectively because it exploits a fundamental psychological principle called hedonic adaptation. You adapt to your new level of comfort incredibly quickly, which means the boost you get from upgrading your life actually fades much faster than you'd expect. The nice apartment stops feeling special after about 6 months. The new car stops triggering the dopamine hit after a few months. The fancy restaurants become your norm, and they stop feeling like treats. But here's the problem. Your salary doesn't grow as fast as your lifestyle does. Your income might increase 10% per year if you're doing well, but your expenses are growing at a much faster rate because you're not just maintaining your lifestyle, you're constantly upgrading little pieces of it. You replace your old laptop with a newer one. You upgrade your phone. You move to an even nicer apartment because your current nice apartment is starting to feel outdated. And each of these decisions feels totally justified in isolation. But when you add them all up, they create a situation where your lifestyle spending grows much faster than your income, which is the exact opposite of what you need to happen if you want to build wealth. In your 20s, you might have been spending 70% of your income on living expenses, leaving 30% for debt payoff and savings. But by your 30s, you might find yourself spending 85 or 90% of your income on lifestyle expenses, leaving almost nothing for actual wealth building. The worst part is that this happens gradually, so you don't notice it's happening. There's no single moment where you realize you've made a terrible mistake. Instead, there's this slow, creeping realization that despite making significantly more money, you have less left over at the end of the month than you did before. And when you investigate why, you can't really pinpoint what changed because technically, you're being reasonable with every individual decision you made. This is why the lifestyle upgrade trap is so effective at sabotaging your 30s. It feels reasonable. It feels earned. It feels like you're finally enjoying the fruits of your labor. But what it actually does is lock you into a spending pattern that makes it nearly impossible to build real wealth during the decade when your wealth-building capacity is at its peak. In your 30s, your income is climbing, your career is solidifying, and you have decades ahead of you where compound growth can work in your favor. This is exactly when you should be ruthlessly protecting your ability to save and invest. Instead, most people are ruthlessly expanding their lifestyle to match whatever income they can generate. And that brings us to the second money habit that silently sabotages your 30s. The second habit is what I call the debt normalization phenomenon, and it's the financial equivalent of boiling a frog. You put a frog in a pot of boiling water. It jumps out immediately. But you put a frog in a pot of room temperature water and slowly heat it up, and the frog doesn't realize it's in danger until it's too late. Most people in their 30s have slowly adapted to living in a state of constant consumer debt, and they don't even realize how much damage this is doing to their financial future. In your 20s, debt feels like a temporary situation. You have student loans, sure, but that's supposed to be an investment in your future. You might have a car payment because you needed reliable transportation for work. And if you're one of the unlucky ones, you have credit card debt. But that feels like a temporary problem you're going to solve as soon as you make a little more money. But then your 30s hit, and somehow debt has become a permanent fixture of your financial life. You still have student loans, but they're in income-based repayment plans that will take another 15 years to pay off. You have a car payment, and when you pay off one car, you buy another one, so there's always a car payment. You have credit card debt that fluctuates, but never quite goes away. You might have a mortgage if you manage to scrape together a down payment, and now you're making a 30-year commitment to give half your paycheck to a bank. You probably have some kind of personal loan or line of credit. And because you have so much debt, you've stopped thinking of it as something abnormal. It's just part of being a responsible adult in the modern economy. This debt normalization is the second major habit that destroys wealth building in your 30s because it fundamentally changes your relationship with your income. When you have substantial monthly debt obligations, your paycheck never actually feels like your paycheck. A huge chunk of it goes to servicing debt before you even think about living your life. Your student loans take $400 a month. Your car payment takes another $400. Your credit card minimum payments take $200. Your credit card minimum payments take $200. Your credit card minimum payments take $200. Your credit card minimum payments take $200 a month. How's did Malo? It almost become overwhelming, and getting out of bed can feel like climbing a mountain. Your mortgage takes $1,200, and by the time all your debt obligations are paid, you've already committed more than half your income to debt servicing, leaving you with barely anything for actual living expenses, emergency savings, or wealth building. But here's where it gets really insidious. Because debt is so normal now, people stop thinking about it as something that's limiting their financial choices. They don't realize that their debt obligations are the reason they can't save for emergencies. They don't connect the dots between their monthly debt payments and their inability to invest during market downturns. They don't recognize that by committing so much of their income to debt service, they've essentially made a choice to not build wealth in their 30s, the decade when that wealth building could compound into serious money by retirement. And the debt trap works because it creates a perpetual state of financial tightness. Your income goes up, but your debt obligations already consumed most of it. So lifestyle spending has to expand just to make up for the psychological weight of being in debt all the time. You spend money on experiences and purchases as a way to feel like you're still making progress, even though you're not actually getting ahead financially. You're just slowly sinking deeper into a debt trap, while telling yourself that once you get that next promotion, you'll really start tackling the debt. But that next promotion never comes with enough extra income because your lifestyle has already expanded to match it. This brings us to the third money habit that silently sabotages your 30s. And this one might be the most destructive of all because it actually feels like responsible financial behavior. The third habit is what I call the investment avoidance loop, and it's killing your long-term wealth-building potential more effectively than anything else. Here's how it works. You're in your 30s, you're finally making real money, and you know you should be investing. You've heard about compound growth. You understand that time in the market is more important than timing the market. You know that investing in your 30s is the single most effective wealth-building tool available to you, mathematically speaking. But then you look at your finances, and you realize you don't really have much left over to invest after you pay for your lifestyle and your debt obligations. So you tell yourself that you'll start investing next month, right after you pay down your credit card, or right after you get your emergency fund up to a full 6 months of expenses, or right after you get through the holidays without going into more debt. But next month comes, and something always comes up. Your car needs a repair. Your friend's destination wedding requires a flight and hotel. Your apartment building announces a rent increase. Your phone breaks and you need to replace it. Some new subscription sounds amazing and you sign up. You go out to eat more than usual, and suddenly you're right back where you started, with nothing left to invest. The investment avoidance loop is so effective because it feels completely reasonable. You're telling yourself that you're being smart by tackling debt before investing, by building an emergency fund before risking money in the market, by making sure your lifestyle is stable before committing money to long-term investments. These are all things that sound prudent and responsible. But here's the mathematical reality that nobody wants to talk about. If you wait until your debt is gone and your emergency fund is perfectly padded and your lifestyle is completely stable before you start investing, you might be waiting until you're 45 or 50 years old. And by that point, you've missed the most critical compounding years of your entire investing life. A person who invests $500 a month starting at age 30 will have significantly more money at age 65 than a person who waits until age 40 to invest $1,000 a month. The cam tamils we garias fits microfrot accrue. The discat turux and the lolls at you alluves at whites or vue to invest $1,000 a month. The math is that brutal. Yerio said to move bictionlo. The 10-year head start is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, even if you're investing less money per month. This is why the investment avoidance loop is so destructive. You're not just missing out on some extra money in retirement. You're potentially missing out on hundreds of thousands of dollars because you were waiting for the perfect time to start investing, and the perfect time never actually comes, especially when you're trapped in the first two habits of lifestyle inflation and debt normalization. Now, here's where these three habits really become dangerous. They don't exist in isolation. They work together in a coordinated assault on your financial future. The lifestyle upgrade trap creates the need for more income, which justifies taking on more debt, which makes the debt feel normal and acceptable. Now, here's where these three habits really become dangerous. They don't exist in isolation. They work together in a coordinated assault on your financial future. The lifestyle upgrade trap creates the need for more income, which justifies taking on more debt, which makes the debt feel normal and acceptable. You don't have substantial investments. You don't have meaningful savings. You don't have any of the wealth-building assets that previous generations had accumulated by this point in their lives. What makes this situation even more infuriating is that there's a critical window in your 30s where fixing these habits is still relatively easy. If you're 32 years old and you realize you're stuck in the lifestyle upgrade trap, you can downsize your apartment, sell your car, cut your discretionary spending, and over 5 years, you could accumulate a massive amount of capital that you can then deploy into investments. You could actually recover from the mistakes you made in your early 30s. But if you wait until you're 45 or 50, the math becomes much harder. You've got fewer compounding years left. Your earning potential is starting to peak out, and the lifestyle you've built over 20 years is now deeply ingrained in your identity and your psychology, making it exponentially harder to change. The statistics on this are absolutely brutal. Studies show that people who don't establish strong wealth-building habits by age 35 are significantly less likely to ever achieve financial security, even if their income continues to increase. Your 30s aren't just important for building wealth. They're the critical decade where you either set yourself up for financial freedom or lock yourself into a lifetime of financial stress. This is the decade that determines your 40s, your 50s, and your 60s. This is the decade where the decisions you make compound into either significant wealth or significant debt. And here's the thing that absolutely drives me crazy about this situation. Nobody's keeping this from you on purpose. You're not being deliberately excluded from wealth-building knowledge. The information is readily available. Books about building wealth are bestsellers. Financial podcasts are incredibly popular. The strategies for getting out of this trap are well known and widely shared. But what's not talked about nearly enough is how these three habits form a self-reinforcing trap that becomes exponentially harder to escape the longer you stay in it. The longer you normalize debt, the more acceptable it becomes to take on more of it. And the longer you avoid investing, the more desperate you feel about ever being able to catch up. This is why understanding these three habits in your 30s is so critical. Because once you see how they work together, you can start to dismantle them. You can recognize when you're falling into the lifestyle upgrade trap and actively choose to keep your expenses flat even as your income rises. You can stop viewing debt as a normal part of adult life and start treating it as the financial emergency it actually is. And you can break through the investment avoidance loop by starting to invest, even in small amounts, right now, while you still have time to let compound growth work its magic. The people who successfully break out of these 3 habits in their 30s, they're not smarter than you. They're not more disciplined than you. They've just made a conscious decision that building wealth is more important to them than maintaining a specific lifestyle or avoiding the discomfort of paying down debt or facing the psychological challenge of putting money into the stock market. They've decided that their future financial freedom is worth more than their current lifestyle inflation. And that decision, that single shift in priorities, is what separates people who build real wealth from people who stay trapped in the quietly broke cycle for their entire lives. The crazy thing is that the habits that save you in your 30s are almost embarrassingly simple. You don't need to get rich. You don't need to win the lottery. You don't even need to dramatically increase your income. You just need to establish 3 counter habits that directly oppose these sabotaging patterns. First, you need to make a conscious decision to keep your lifestyle flat, even as your income rises. Every time you get a raise or a promotion, that money needs to go to either debt payoff or investments, not lifestyle upgrades. Second, you need to treat debt like the financial emergency it is, and commit to eliminating it as quickly as possible. And third, you need to start investing immediately, even if you can only invest a small amount each month, because time in the market is worth exponentially more than the size of your investment. These 3 counter habits seem incredibly simple when you write them out, but they're brutally difficult to maintain when your brain is constantly telling you that you deserve upgrades, and when your friends are all living upgraded lifestyles, and when the weight of debt makes you want to spend money just to feel like you're not drowning. But here's what's important to understand. The difficulty of maintaining these counter habits in your 30s is absolutely nothing compared to the difficulty of trying to build wealth in your 40s and 50s without having established these habits early. The financial math becomes exponentially worse the longer you wait. Every year you delay breaks the compounding power that should be working for you. This is your decade. Your 30s are the most critical financial decade of your entire life. This is when your choices matter the most. This is when small changes create the biggest impact. And this is when the habits you establish will literally determine whether you spend your 40s, 50s, and 60s building wealth and enjoying financial security, or whether you'll spend decades desperately trying to make up for the mistakes you made during this critical decade. The 3 money habits that silently sabotage your 30s aren't mysterious or complicated. They're just lifestyle inflation, debt normalization, and investment avoidance, working together to slowly dismantle your financial future while you tell yourself everything is fine. But now that you know what they are, now that you understand how they work, you actually have the power to stop them. The question is whether you'll take action or whether you'll keep telling yourself that you'll deal with it next month. Because next month never comes, and that's exactly why these habits are so effective at destroying your financial future. If this resonated with you, make sure to hit that subscribe button and check out my video on the cost of waiting, where I break down exactly how much money you lose by delaying your wealth building by just 5 years. Because once you see those numbers, you'll never look at your financial decisions the same way again.